and welcome to this crossover edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast and the Locked On Vegas Golden Knights podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast and Locked On Vegas Golden Knights podcast your first listen of the day. For everybody on the Vegas Golden Knights feed, let me introduce myself. My name is Armando Velez. I'm from PantherParkway.com. You can follow me on Twitter at MondoMan12. Follow the show account on Twitter at LO_FLA Panthers. So on this edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, I am very pleased to have the host of Locked On Vegas Golden Knights, Tony Cordasco. Tony, how are you doing today?
It's great to be back with you. You know, last time the Panthers won this game and in convincing fashion. And I think at that time I told you that the Vegas Golden Knights weren't very good. No one believed me. And now here we are. They're just starting to tank away. I think, in one more loss, if they lose to Florida, I mean, it could really come unraveled, for this team because they play the Kings here on Saturday in a matinee. And then they go to Minnesota to play the Wild. It could really get dicey here, and a lot of the fans are not happy, but we'll get into that.
Absolutely, and I'll definitely have a lot of questions related to the Vegas Golden Knights. We'll discuss that more in the second segment, but the reason why we're not discussing the the Vegas Golden Knights first is because the Florida Panthers have had a lot of activity on Wednesday. But actually, it's funny. Before we get there, I'm glad that you actually got the memo of wearing a green hat because the episode that this drops, it's St. Patrick's Day. I decided to wear the green polo and you decided to wear the green hat. Didn't even message each other about it. So we kind of matched there. So pretty cool, Tony.
We're coordinated.
Yeah,
we're coordinated. It's nice to be coordinated with another host for once and to be a little bit in sync. And I'm also wearing a sort of a green sweater here. So
dark.
It's in the, we got to be festive for the season. And here in Vegas, absolutely. I got to tell you, so March Madness coming up Thursday, right, in full swing. And we've got so many other things happening, in this city. It's just crazy right now. A lot of tourists in town, and it's a lot of fun. St. Patrick's Day, which everyone goes just hog wild in this town as well. So I'm sure you see it there in South Florida.
Absolutely. I'm a little bit north of the territory in Orlando, which a lot of tourists come. So yeah, definitely see a lot of that during this time of year. But let's get into what the Florida Panthers have done in the last day. We are a few days away from the trade deadline. From the time this is recorded and this record drops, it'll be 4 days from the trade deadline. A lot of reporters have said that expect a few moves early. I mean, we saw the Calgary Flames trade for Tyler Toffoli with the Montreal Canadiens and a few other trades as well. I mean, Colorado traded for Josh Manson of the Anaheim Ducks in exchange for a second-round pick. And the Florida Panthers decided to get on the trade block quite early just to get their guys in, to get them accumulated to the system. I mean, 22 games left. So the Florida Panthers, the day after Frank Vatrano scores 2 goals, including the game-winning goal against the San Jose Sharks. First goal since January 1st against the Montreal Canadiens. So kind of increased a little bit of his trade value. The Florida Panthers originally wanted a second-round pick out of that trade for Frank Vatrano, but they were very lucky enough to get anything out of it. Frank Vatrano has been a healthy scratch 11 times in 60 games this season. So they took off $2.5 million of salary, something that Vegas is very familiar with, trying to shed salary all the time. And I wasn't expecting another move after this. I thought an expiring contract, he's helping a contender in the New York Rangers in their bottom 6, and they're doing justice by Frank Vatrano. So I really like that move for Frank Vatrano. The next move for the Florida Panthers is a big one. They trade for defenseman Ben Chiarot of the Montreal Canadiens in exchange for Ty Smilanic, who's at Quinnipiac University playing NCAA hockey, a 22 fourth-round pick, and a 2023 first-round pick. So now the Florida Panthers don't have a first-round pick in 2022. That was the Sam Reinhart trade. And now 2023 with Ben Chiarot. My initial opinion first coming into this is, man, this is a lot that you have to give up for an expiring deal. But if you are as confident as you are in your team, as Bill Zito is, to go for a cup, then why not go for it if you really do believe that this guy can fit in your system? And before we recorded, Tony, we talked about how Vegas unloaded a lot of their first round picks. I mean, Mark Stone for Eric Brandstrom, Nolan Patrick for Cody Glass, Max Pacioretty for Nick Suzuki, just in a quite a few years. Talk about how, from the Vegas Golden Knights side of things, when they were making their fair share of trades, what was the mindset between the fans and, at the time, the GM of the Golden Knights when they did make those trades to try to go for it?
The first thing I just wanted to ask you, so now does that mean that Claude Giroux is off the table?
No, he's not. I don't think he's off the table because they did not give up their biggest trade chip right now, which is Owen Tippett, who's right now in the AHL.
Right. And then, so with the Chiarot deal as well, didn't I hear that Florida now has to give up? They're going to have to pay 50% of his contract. It's an expiring deal, another rental for 22 games. Is that worth it? You just have to wonder. And here in Las Vegas, yes, we've had our share of trade deadline deals. I know Ryan Reeves was a trade deadline deal. Thomas Tatar, him, Mark Stone in that trade where VGK gave up Eric Brandstrom and all of that, and Alec Martinez was another one of trade deadline deal the Golden Knights had to come up with. But you have a lot of assets, and VGK had accumulated a ton of assets with each and every one of those deals. So the fans really were not surprised, nor were they, upset that they gave up some of the future chips. I mean, I think they're more upset now that this team, even with Jack Eichel in the lineup, is losing regularly, even despite 10 players that are being out, that are injured. I think that the fans they're getting so restless here. Some have called for Pete DeBoer's head, Kelly McCrimmon's head. I mean, they're going up the flagpole here to see who they can try to get out of this organization here. And so things have turned ugly rather quickly. They've been in some games, 5-game road swing, and they played 4 teams that aren't even in the playoff picture right now. Or 3 teams that, for VGK, I mean, things are just going sideways and fast. And I still expect them to make something happen here by Monday's trade deadline. And I would have to start with goaltending because right now it stinks. I mean, Laurent Brossoit, how many times could you get beat? I mean, he just gets beat on top shelf goals, starting with the Ducks game. And then they have the scouting report, and you just go top shelf on this guy. And in the Winnipeg game, he gave up 4 goals. 3 were just over his shoulder, up high, elevate the puck. And then, Logan Thompson is the number 2 goalie. And we still don't know how long Robin Leonard's going to be out for the VGK. So it's a really tough situation that this organization is in. They hurt themselves a lot by tying down a lot of these players who haven't really panned out with long-term deals. And so it's going to be interesting here come trade deadline day, if not before.
And from the Florida Panthers side of things, they can definitely relate to what Vegas was trying to do. You think of future assets with what you're trying to do right in the now. That draft pick that they are giving up, they don't know how long that player is going to take before they hit the NHL level. So I think of it like that when they trade away. They still were able to, even in last year's trade deadline when they traded for Sam Bennett, they were still able to keep their first round pick in 2021. They drafted Mackie Samoskevich, who's now at the University of Michigan, playing in a bottom 6 role on a logjam of forwards with Michigan. So still a piece that the Florida Panthers have kept, at least as of this recording. But I think of it as your cup window is right now to contend. Go for it. That's what the Vegas Golden Knights saw there. And I mean, I know they have a whole bunch of injuries and all, and with a fully healthy roster, the Vegas Golden Knights are not a team outside of the playoff bubble. I think everybody I think I think at least people outside of Vegas think that. At least I do. But with going for it, even if it means giving up a few assets, okay. But I also think of the asset that they got back from Frank Vatrano. At least from what I'm seeing right here, the asset that they gave up to trade for Ben Chiarot, it's a 2022 fourth round pick, which is a pick that they traded for with the New York Rangers. I'm looking it up right now to see if it was the Rangers pick that they traded or their own.
It was the Rangers pick, and then I guess it's based on their record right at the end of the season, or however that works out. But it's that very same pick.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, so here's the conditions. The Panthers' first round pick in 2022 is top 10 protected. In the event that the Panthers retain their 2022 first round pick with no longer their own 2023 first round pick, in Montreal would instead get their 2024 first round pick. And then
that's a lot.
So
a lot of caveats.
Yeah, and it says for the fourth round pick, it says Florida will receive the lower of the two. So both of them are conditional picks for the Florida Panthers going the other way. So that was like a little bit of chess, getting one piece to set up another. So I kind of applaud the Florida Panthers in that sense for making something happen, even if it's an expiring deal. But Claude Giroux is still not off the table because they haven't. I think just because Owen Tippett is still in the organization, I think that's why there's still a very strong possibility. And there were scouts at an AHL Charlotte game just a few weeks ago scouting Owen Tippett. So let's see. This is definitely gonna be an exciting time for the Florida Panthers, as I'm anticipating maybe one more move. The Claude Giroux plays his 1,000th game in the NHL on Thursday, same night that the Panthers and Vegas Golden Knights play. Will a move be
final
made
game
next day?
Out the door on a plane, headed towards the Panthers, and for the Golden Knights, I mean, they're going to be sellers and buyers. And as I've explained to several other folks in our network, and then also on our Locked On VGK show, this is a team that, okay, there's a salary cap, but Vegas is salary cap ignorant, if you will. They don't even consider the salary cap. That's why now they're in a world of hurt. We don't know how many of these players they're stowing away, how many are seriously injured, how many are even going to be able to come back should they make the playoffs. We know none of that. It's all secretive. But VGK, the one thing that we have learned is if there is a need for this organization, they will go out and they will get that player or players, and then they will face the salary cap ramifications later. They're just they're just fearless like that, and they really don't care. They'll finagle things around here, later on. But right now, the here and now, with just 20 games to go for VGK, I mean, this team is in serious danger of not making the playoffs, and it was a previous Stanley Cup contender. And they're not right now. And even if they were fully loaded, I still don't know, because Pete DeBoer's system right now is so predictable. Teams have caught up to Pete DeBoer and to the Golden Knights and what they try to do. And you can read this team night in and night out. They're just not playing good hockey, period. I don't care who's in the lineup. And the goaltending, again, is a major, major concern.
Yeah, well, I definitely want to ask you more about Vegas in the next segment. We're going to talk more about the trade deadline and what they're expected to do, and players who are on LTIR right now for the Vegas Golden Knights. But first, we're going to tell you all about BetOnline. It's that time of year as college basketball tournament is finally upon us. From all the latest odds, contests, and player props, BetOnline.net is number one source for all your sports betting needs and info. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. It's not just basketball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. And welcome back to this edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast and the Locked On Vegas Golden Knights podcast on this Thursday, March 17th, St. Patrick's Day edition of the show. And make sure to also tune into our trade deadline special on Monday for the people on the Florida Panthers feed, I will be going live at 3 p.m. to be discussing all the trade deadline for the Florida Panthers. And at 3:30, make sure to check out Locked On Fantasy Hockey's YouTube channel with Flip and Steel, as they'll be discussing the trade deadline and bringing in some of the local experts from each and every team to discuss what they're going to do. So, Tony, many thought going into the season that if in a playoff position, that the Vegas Golden Knights would be buyers. And you're not the first person in relation to the Vegas Golden Knights that I've heard talk about the trade deadline and possible selling. I was listening to Jesse Granger today talking about, we don't know what they're going to do because of one thing and one thing only: health. How healthy can this team get from now, which is less than a week away, to the trade deadline, to make them feel comfortable enough to say we're comfortable with X players staying here long term versus shipping out X player? What do you think of that as far as the health and which direction they're going to go?
So on Wednesday, we saw where VGK sent back down to AHL team here in Las Vegas, in Henderson, I should say, to the Silver Knights. Paul Cotter was sent back down, Jonas Ronbjorg, and Danil Maramanov. So to me, the signal now is that perhaps Braden McNabb will be back in the lineup, is what I just have to speculate right now for Thursday night's game. I think we'll see McNabb returning pretty soon. Ben Hutton was on COVID protocols. It's so funny. Like, before you go to Canada, you take the COVID test and then you test positive. You know, it's funny how that works, but you don't take it any other time. So who knows who has COVID out there? But and then Brett Howden also could be returning, and Matthias Janmark has been out as well for a while. There's currently 10, I believe, Golden Knights that are out, and right now, you're going to be shuffling players in and out, but it's going to be kind of funny, not funny in a funny way, but in a weird way. What players now suddenly are healthy again as we approach the trade deadline? Because were those guys, about to be healthy, semi-healthy? I think players are going to suddenly be healthy, and especially with 20 games remaining. If you are, even hobbling a little bit, it's time to just play, right? It's time to just get out there and play. So I think we're going to see some players coming back. We will not see, of course, Mark Stone. I call him Mark Stowe, because they stow him away, and he's on the LTIR. So Stone is still out. Of course, Robin Leonard is on injured reserve. And we also have Riley Smith was put on the injured reserve list. And they mention his name an awful lot. And here in Las Vegas, we're going to start working on his summer charity game here very shortly. So I don't know what his status is, if they're going to try to deal him or whatever, but he's a huge fan favorite here in Las Vegas. And then there's other players also that are out right now, including Max Pacioretty. Pacioretty's been out, like 3 times this season. He's in, he's out. So it's gotten really crazy and very strange season here. Very odd, but they should not be using all these injuries as the crutch. I just think that this team has a lot of talent still remaining out there. There's no way they should lose to some of these bottom feeders. They still have a lot of talent, but they're just not closing out games. They're not playing with any type. I got to tell you, Mondo, they're not playing with any type of enthusiasm whatsoever. I mean, there's nights where they just show up and they sleepwalk through games. They did it in the Flyers game. They've done it on the road. They've done it at home. Even with the home crowd, they have not responded very well.
Mm-hmm. And I decided to look up some numbers for the very exact day that Jack Eichel returned to the lineup, which was a very great day in hockey in general, because you had Panthers Hurricanes on TNT, Panthers first game on TNT that season, Avs Golden Knights, women's Winter Olympic final, all in the same night going on. So that was a beautiful day to celebrate the game of hockey in general. But it hasn't been pretty for the Vegas Golden Knights. I'm seeing that in between that time, third worst record in the NHL since that span. Goals for per game is last. Goals against is actually around the same, 33.36. Power play is 29th, and then penalty kill is 21st. So a little bit, their defense is a little bit better than the offense from what these numbers are reading. But and I see that Jack Eichel has 9 points in 14 games as well. Who are the Vegas Golden Knights relying on with this current roster to score, and they're just not finding a way? Who are they relying on?
Well, number one is Eichel, and the major concern for me right now is there are no players other than right now Jonathan Marchessault who could even play on the top line with him. I mean, they moved William Karlsson, who I'm not a big fan. I haven't been for quite some time. He's scoreless. He hasn't scored a goal in 15 games. And the last on this road trip, he's -6 in 5 games on the road. And they try to get him going on the Eichel line, and there's just absolutely no chemistry there. And to me, like, you need a goaltender. Yes, I talked about the trade deadline, but I still believe you might need someone who can skate up and down the ice. And I don't know, Pietrangelo has some, sort of rhythm there when Eichel's in the game. And, Pacioretty as well. Pacioretty was on the same line, and those guys sort of find some chemistry together. But I don't know if Mark Stone is even fast enough to be on that top line, even when he returns. I just think he's playing at a different level, and he's 50, 60, 70% back. And I think he's done an awful lot with his team. And the power play would be absolutely complete garbage. It's garbage right now, but it would be utterly garbage if he weren't on that power play unit. And they've scored twice in the last two. They've scored the last 2 games on the power play. But I mean, Dadonov is a guy I think they're going to ship him out. I can't, if somebody wants him, they're going to have to unload him because he was on the top line. He was on the top line with Eichel for a minute. And then they moved him all the way down to the 4th line. They can't find a spot for him. And he was -4 in the game against Winnipeg. I mean, and defense, you said defense looks like they're outplaying the offense. They're out shooting the offense, I think. And the biggest issue with this team right now, Mondo, is that they can't get in front of the net and they can't score and they go through droughts. Reason being, again, I got to go back to Pete DeBoer's system where they're playing on the outside. Teams have now learned to just bottle up the middle against the Golden Knights. They're shooting. They might get 30, 40 shots on net a night, but they're not quality shots. Why? They're coming from angles. They're coming from the corners. They're coming from wherever,
not in the slot.
But not in front, not in the slot, not in front of the net, not on deflections. And that's a big problem.
So it's giving goalies enough.
You're getting me fired up, Mondo. What's that?
It's giving goalies enough time to be fired up for to get ready for a save instead of reacting, instead of someone tipping in a puck that the goalie can't even see. Screens as well. So that affects a lot when you can't really get into the slot. So that's, and you were talking about Evgeny Dadonov. I mean,
I know you had to change the pronunciation. Is that what I heard?
Yeah,
he changed the pronunciation. It's Dadonov now.
It was Dadonov when he was in Florida. So he changed it a little bit.
This is the West Coast version of him.
Yeah. So he was on the top line with Barkov when he was in Florida, but he also went through his fair share of scoring droughts as well. Of course, the Florida Panthers were not going to pay him what he wanted, so it was best when he went up to Ottawa as well. So definitely a signing that the Panthers are definitely nodding. That's like, okay, we lucked out that they didn't sign him long term of the money that he wanted. But as far another Florida Panther, Riley Smith, you mentioned that he just went on injured reserve. I checked his cap friendly just now. It was just 2 days ago. He was a talk a lot about trade, but now with Eichel being in the mix, now with Mark Stone going on LTIR, is there still a chance that he does get traded either way just to get something out of it, even though he's on IR, and even though Eichel is able to come into the lineup with Mark Stone being out?
Yeah, there is still a very good possibility because it's an expiring contract, and they have to get rid of some money off the books. I think Donoff would be the number one target. We hear Riley Smith's name an awful lot, and Shea Theodore, I think his name is also in the mix. Right now, I'll tell you what, there are very few players on this roster right now because this team is definitely a "what have you done for me lately" club. There are very few players right now with the Knights that are very safe in their jobs. And I don't
Mm.
know how Carlson is. He knows the secrets, man. I got to tell you. He hasn't scored in 15 games. He's got 7 goals. That's almost $1 million per goal this
Oh my
season.
God,
I
that's
mean, he's just
amazing.
every season it's just gone backwards. Like he can't even win faceoffs anymore. So
Mm.
I don't know what his value is, and I don't know if anyone else wants him.
Mm. At the cap hit that he's at, I'm not sure, definitely, but yeah, hopefully for Vegas Golden Knights, if they do find themselves out of the playoff mix come Monday, that they do acquire the assets that they need to, and if they find a way to power their way back into the wild card, maybe they'll buy a little bit, but they've done a lot of buying in the last few years. But we're going to transition over to the next segment where we will be talking about possible starters. We'll be talking about predictions for this game, and we'll talk about that more next on this episode of Locked On Panthers and Locked On Vegas Golden Knights. Continuing this conversation on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast and the Locked On Vegas Golden Knights podcast. I'm Armando Velez. I got Tony Cordasco here of Locked On Vegas Golden Knights on to chat about this game. It's a 10:30 Eastern puck drop for everyone in South Florida. I will definitely be doing a post game once again with Nick Fairbanks. We'll be staying up just like we did with Jacob Winans on like we did on Tuesday night. So 10:30 puck drop. I will say, Tony, I don't know who's going to start net for the Florida Panthers because
It was Spencer Knight last time.
it was Spencer Knight last time. He did start back-to-back games, not back-to-back days, but back-to-back games because Sergei Bobrovsky, while sitting on the bench in LA, took a puck to the face, had 17 stitches on his mouth just the other day. He was supposed to start in San Jose, was surprisingly scratched against San Jose. Spencer Knight gets the win, a comeback win for the Panthers. So Andrew Brunette after the game spoke about how it had nothing to do with the stitches, but might have been like a small flu for Sergei Bobrovsky. I don't know how much I buy that, but with the health of with getting 17 stitches and having to communicate to defenses, I don't know whether he's going to actually start or not. So I'm going to say that Spencer Knight gets to start once again against Vegas Golden Knights, who he faced off against last go round in this one. I'm not sure how fast Ben Chiarot will get to the Florida Panthers, so I'm going to assume he won't play tomorrow against the Vegas Golden Knights. So I'm not counting on that as
Do you guys
well.
have a back-to-back? Don't you play the Ducks after
Yes,
VGK? So the
yes, they
next
do play
night,
the
right?
They do play the Ducks on Friday. So I said a few days ago that if they do decide to not start Spencer Knight in back-to-back games, they're likely going to do this time around, special exception because of Bob's stitches. They're going to put him on the Thursday game and likely Bob on Friday. But if it was a normal circumstance where it's a regular season and both of them are healthy, he didn't take that puck to the face, chances are Bobrovsky would have been starting tonight in Vegas. But Tony, the Florida Panthers have never won on the road against the Vegas Golden Knights in their 3 matchups against Vegas. I mean, all 3 times. I mean, Vegas was really up there, going far into the playoffs, making the Stanley Cup final once, going to the semifinal just last year. But this still feels like Vegas is still a very hostile environment, no matter for any opponent. It's still a very hard place to play for any opponent. So, and Vegas is coming off a 5-game road trip where they didn't win a single game. I believe that Vegas is going to be very fired up coming into this one. How about you?
The hostilities might be against the Vegas Golden Knights, even with the home crowd. That's how I feel, because the fans are just fed up right now because they're just
Understandable.
not playing. Yeah, they're just not playing. It's one thing, if you're losing and you're playing inspired hockey, you might not get that break and the puck luck and everything else that goes into losing, and you lose 1-goal games. But they're just, at times, they just look like they're going to quit. And I'm just going to be honest with you. They don't, they're not playing inspired hockey. And that has to only be pointed towards Pete DeBoer and the coaching staff. And again, we're going to see Laurent Brossoit in net, probably for starters. And on 23 shots, the Jets scored 7 goals. They had to pull Brossoit after he gave up his 4th goal, or he just, I don't know, man. I don't feel very comfortable with the way that they're playing. And it's all about the system and Pete DeBoer, and he's going to, come hell or high water, just stick with what he's been doing. And they even try to simplify the game, and not working. And I don't feel, I don't even know, like in the past. Yeah. And this is a must-win game for the Golden Knights. Like I said,
Absolutely. Yes.
yeah, because the
Yes.
schedule just gets more difficult here. And if they lose to Florida, I could see it just snowballing downhill. I really could. And in the past, though, they did have home ice advantage. They're not very good at home this season. They've not played well at home. They were playing better on the road, save this past road trip, than they were at home. And we don't
Hmm.
know, are fans going to show up? Because Vegas, I'll tell you about the fan in this city. If you are not winning, they are not coming out to the games. It's going to be a drunk crowd too, because it's St. Patrick's Day. It's going to be wild.
Oh, and if they don't score early and often, they might get booed. They might get booed. They might be a lot of
They
cheers.
might get booed, yeah.
They're
And there might be a lot of green ice,
yeah.
out there.
I didn't consider that, Tony. So good point. I mean, for people listening on the Florida Panthers feed, Brossoit is 10-9-3 with a 290 goals against average, 895 save
Just
percentage
shoot the puck up
this season.
top. Elevate
So
it. Just elevate the stinking puck.
top shelf, bar down, so they know what to do. So
That's the
so
game plan. It's so
yeah.
easy. I could score.
Mhm. So with 20 games left for Vegas, 3 before the trade deadline, I would say that maybe it's too late to fire Pete DeBoer at this point of the season, because you'll be like throwing away the season if you were to do that. Something that Jacob Winans and I the other day on Locked On Florida Panthers talked about, former Panthers coach. What are you thinking about the job status of Pete DeBoer right now?
Shaky ground. Shaky ground. I mean, they might not admit it, but it was just so odd after the Winnipeg game, especially where, I mean, he looks like he's just beat down right now. And after the Winnipeg game, where he said, that he felt that they played pretty well at times and all of that, they gave up 7 goals. I mean, there's nothing positive about giving, there were no empty netters here. And they gave up a late power play goal, and they gave up a late shorthanded goal.
Oh my God.
There's nothing positive. There's nothing. You just need to trash your team. And then, of course, there's the crutch of all the injuries. But outside of all those injuries, again, they just are not fired up to play hockey. And they sleepwalk through most of the night. And they give up goals in bunches. So if Florida scores 1 goal, they might score 3 or 4 in a row. We saw that happen on the road. And again, Winnipeg did it with 3 straight. The previous game was Columbus. What do they have? Four consecutive goals. It's a mess. I mean, it really is a mess. And I can't see it getting any better. Yeah, they're going to fill in some of those players. But again, getting the rhythm back after they've been out for a while, I don't know how they're going to gel. The lines, there's so many mismatched lines. I like, I mean, you have Stevenson now on the second line. He was doing pretty well on the top line. But, of course, we've got Eichel now here in Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
And he's been with Carrier and Waugh. The Donoff could be on the 3rd or the 4th, maybe the 5th line. Maybe he'll be on the 5th line in this game. But, you've got him. Nolan Patrick, good thing he's back because he was out with another head injury. And Keegan Colasar. Let me tell you one crazy story, though. The turning point in the Winnipeg game was when Keegan Colasar, for some odd reason, thought that he was going to fight 6'7" Logan Stanley, and he'd lost like a 10-9, 10-8 round. I mean, he just was getting pummeled. And at intermission, he's like, yeah, I was just trying to get my team fired up. It backfired. And Stanley had the Gordie Howe hat trick in the game. After the fight, he had an assist, he had a goal, and that team was just the first goal, I think, of the season. Maybe first goal ever. I don't know. But like it totally backfired. I'm like, what are they doing? And then stupid penalties. Marchessault takes another dumb penalty, a slashing penalty. They're down 5-3. They cut into the lead in the Winnipeg game, slashing, but then he gets a 10-minute game misconduct for being unsportsmanlike, yelling at the ref. He did this on the last road trip in Philadelphia. Pacioretty, before he was out of the lineup, was conking someone on the back of their head, like just dumb penalties. And that's what happens when you start to lose. They're unraveling. I don't see how they get back to even ground. I don't.
Yeah, and looking at the Vegas Golden Knights on their recent road trip, only one goal game. The Buffalo game, though, there was an empty netter at the end, so that you can count that as a 1 goal game. So the rest of them,
that was Alex Tuck. Alex Tuck,
part of the trade.
He took the puck away from Eichel, flat out stole it, and then just skidded down and fired it in. And that was like a massive facial in that game. I was like, and that's why Eichel was like yelling at the fans, and they were booing him, and that was a disaster.
All right, so who wins this one?
Well, I want to hear your take. So what about any changes from the first meeting on any of your lines or anything that the Vegas Golden Knights should look out for in this game?
Barkov always has a different right winger on his line every single time. Maybe look for Maxim Mammon to be there again. But with Frank Vatrano being traded, chances are Maxim Mammon could also be on the fourth line. Sam Reinhart could be shifted to the first or the second. Anthony Duclair was on the third line last go around when he spent a good few weeks on the second. So it's been a few line shakeups in the last game for the Panthers. So they might stick to that or go back to what they were prior to Tuesday's game. But historically, the Panthers haven't been good in Vegas. They've been a mediocre road team, but they've been a lot better since the start of January. But it's still a very good road trip so far. 3 out of the 4 points so far. But I'm going to say that the Vegas Golden Knights take this one in overtime. The Florida Panthers will split a point, and if they win on Friday against the Anaheim Ducks, who are also kind of free falling themselves, it'll be 6 out of 8 points on this West Coast trip, and it'll be a very successful trip for the Florida Panthers. So I'm going to say that the Vegas Golden Knights, in desperation, fighting for their coach, fighting for their team, get an overtime win, maybe something like 3-2 or 4-3, maybe.
Yeah, I think it could be like 5-3 in favor of Florida. I do. I just I can't see this team just getting out of this and doing it seemingly overnight. They're just not playing good hockey right now. There's a lot of sugarcoating, and my feeling is that Pete DeBoer might have lost this team in the locker room. I really do feel that. And I just think that it's going to be Florida. And after that, who knows? Maybe this team doesn't even make the playoffs, and that would be a major disappointment here in Las Vegas. But it should be a fun crowd. But if they start losing, the Boo Birds will come out here in Vegas. And then this could be a turning point, with this organization. Really could.
They, of course,
shoot the puck high.
Like we said,
elevate the puck.
Like I said, they could be a little reckless over there in Vegas. Once again, at 10:30 p.m. Eastern start time for this game out in Las Vegas. So, Tony, I want to thank you for joining on this crossover edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. For my listeners, tell them where they can find you and your work online.
So at Locked On VGK is where you can find our Vegas Golden Knights podcast on the Locked On Network. And then I am at Tony Cordasco, and it is always a pleasure to catch up with you. And I know that you've had some late nights on this road trip. I like it when VGK goes back east because it's reversed for us. They're playing 4 o'clock and 5 o'clock games in the afternoon, and that's perfect. I still have the rest of the night to go. But
Yeah.
not you. You're up late night. This one's
Mhm.
going to be over what, about 1:30 in the morning your time.
Yeah, finally finished editing and posting a show at like 3:05 a.m. So yeah, so it's long nights, but I couldn't have more fun covering this team and a team that's definitely winning. So that makes it all so worth it for myself. But for people on the Vegas Golden Knights feed, you can follow me on Twitter at MondoMan12. Follow the show account on Twitter at LO_F LA Panthers, and we'll be discussing this game online on Thursday night. So follow us, and you'll see two different sides of it. But Tony, I want to say thank you once again for doing this with me, and hope to talk to you soon.
Yep, you guys are going to make a big run now for the Cup, and you Florida guys are always tan.
I hope so.